Now that we know how we can use an array list to create a variable-sized container, when and how would we use one? Well, there are many instances when it would be useful. Clearly, any time when we want to be able to continually add elements, but we don't know exactly how many will be added. Let's apply what we know about array lists to our temperature plotting problem from earlier, so that we can add new temperature values each day. We can start by adapting the program that we have to use array lists instead of arrays. The first thing to change is the array initialization. We want to store floating point numbers, so our array list can be declared like this. We'll also need to replace any parts of our code where we access array locations with calls to the ArrayList get method, like this. We'll also need to replace any references to the array length attributes with calls to the ArrayList size method. Now that we've updated our example to use an array list instead of an array, we can start adding extra values in. But before we do, let's adjust our axes and scales so that the graph fits the data. We can use the ArrayList size method to set the x-axis scale based on how many temperature entries we have. We can now use the ArrayList add method to add as many temperature readings as we want to be graphed. To simulate a user creating the entries, we can use a for loop to randomly generate a number of entries by using the random function like this, which generates a random value between these two values, 10 and 40. To specify how many values we want our for loop to generate, we've used a constant, temps to generate, which we can then use in the condition of our for loop. Try changing this constant and running the program with several different values to see how our graph changes. We've now updated our program to use array lists rather than arrays, which allows us to change the number of temperature readings as we go, instead of requiring us to have a fixed number at the start. Realistically, a user would be able to continually add new temperature readings every time a new one is taken, and the graph would update automatically. To show how the program might work if we did allow users to enter values each day, we've prepared some example code that allows us to enter our own values like this. You can try out the code yourself below. In this section, we've learned about fundamental data structures and about the array and ArrayList data structures. We know that arrays are useful for working with a known number of items of a given type, such as a list of words in the dictionary or the daily temperatures for a given set of days. We then saw how we can use for loops to process the data contained in them. We also looked at how we can work with a changing number of items of the same type using an array list. For example, making a list of unique words for a given sentence or recording the names of attendees at an event. Well done! Now that we understand how we can group and work with many elements of data of the same type, we can start to look at ways that we can group and work with sets of instructions and code that perform similar operations, which we will explore in the next section.